Hello and welcome back to the Django e-commerce project. So it's been a while since the last tutorial. I've gone ahead now and created the home of this tutorial, and I'm going to do this to all the tutorial series or projects that we're running in this channel. So you can see here we're going to have the latest code available right here, and then down here you're going to see kind of a much more structured approach to the README page. So you'll be able to access the course content from here if you want to. So there will be individual repositories for the individual parts, but you'll be able to access everything from here, the links to tutorials and the source repositories, as well as look at the future content. If you are interested in what tutorials are next, I've detailed that here, as well as all of your suggestions that you've made so far for features and functions for this system. Now, if you do have any more features that you want to share with us, then please do in the comments and I'll update this with any suggestions that you make. So I have divided them into 3 sections: introduction, intermediate, advanced, and deployment suggestions. So this isn't really a running order. And it might be that we do some intermediate and then go back to introduction and so on as we go through. I've just divided them up here into those kind of different levels. So at the moment, we're not taking any code contributions, but we definitely will be later on in the project. I still want to just keep hold of the project at the moment while we run through these tutorials and continue to develop the code. So here in part 9, we're going to cover 2 aspects here. First of all, we're going to restructure the project folder and then go ahead and prepare for Pytest so that we can test all the code that we currently have. And then from that point, we definitely want to iterate over all the suggestions that you've made. And then as we do that, also update the testing as we go along. So the first step, we're going to basically restructure the project, move some of the files and folders in a way that is probably a little bit more logical to the project that we're building and makes it easier for us to then move the project forward and scale it up. So take, for example, if you had a project folder, Django project folder, with all the files in that one folder, then obviously that would be hundreds of files. It'd be hard to find the files. It'd be difficult to understand what files are connected to what part of the project and so on. So obviously we restructure the project, or we structure a project into files and folders. So it just makes it easier for us to access different parts of our application. There aren't really any performance gains over structuring a project. So in that respect, it doesn't really matter how we structure a project, really. It can come down just to preference. There are, of course, 2 types of projects that we might want to build with Django or Python, maybe a web application, for example, or maybe a pluggable app or package. And that might also dictate how we actually structure our project folder. The big question here, of course, is what is the best way to structure a project? Now, that question is probably better asked, why structure a project? Or that question could be answered by just asking the question, why structure a project in the first place? And like I alluded to there, to structure a project file and folders, really we're trying to just make it easy to access the file and folders, and then or to logically place the files and folders into kind of logical groupings of files or folders. So here what we're going to do in this project is we're just going to make a few changes with the folders, and this folder structure will look a little bit more like a production level or professional level Django project structure folder. So if you go into the project folder and the docs, I'll start to update these documents and make them into markdown documents predominantly. But here you can see I've created this folder structure text just to give you kind of a visual representation of how we're going to structure this project moving on, and just to give you a little bit of an overview of why I'm doing this. So you may already be familiar with the Django project file structure that you're comfortable with. Please use the timeline in the description to kind of move ahead in this tutorial. So here you can see we're going to create a Django root folder that is going to hold the normal files that you're familiar with, the manage.py file, for example, the database. Now our database will be moving across to Postgres soon, so that will be removed, and the requirements file and README markdown file. So that's the main project folder. And here what we've done is when we make a new Django project, that creates a new folder. So normally I call that core. So I have been up to this point. So inside of that folder is our main project folder. So with our settings, URLs, the main URLs, our WSGI file. So what we're going to do now is we're going to restructure our project and place our apps within this project. So it kind of makes sense because when we run start project core, that's a new project. So you might imagine that anything associated to that project would be in that folder. So it kind of makes sense to put the apps folder inside of that project folder. So our project name will be called Ecommerce. So we're going to move that across to Ecommerce. You can see here. So I've restructured this already. And inside of the Ecommerce here, we're going to have the apps folder. So we've already made a few apps already, being the shopping cart or the basket. I've changed the store to catalog. So that's going to be the product catalog, account app, and order app, etc. So these are all the apps that we've developed so far, the different components of our system. So now that's going to reside within our main project folder. So what you probably see in Django applications is two ways of configuring the settings. Now, normally in a larger project, you would have production and development settings, and they might be called development settings or production settings, and they might not be inside of a folder. Some people prefer not to work within a settings folder. They just have it on the main path here. So it's completely up to you whether you have it in a folder or not. Here, we're just going to place it within a folder. Just for development and progressing through these tutorials, it probably makes sense because we want to maybe swap and change these around a little bit. So having them in a folder here called settings, you're familiar with the word settings file, so it kind of directs you to the right place. So I think that's a better way of working at the moment. So now we've moved across from _documentation folder to the docs folder. So this is a normal folder that you'll see. At the moment, we're utilizing this for documentation about the application. So you'll find bits of information, commands, folder structures, file structures, database schemas, etc. inside of there. And I'll develop that as we go along with different diagrams, etc. to give you a better understanding of how the system works as it gets more complex. So other files here you're familiar with, obviously manage.py, so that's going to be in the main directory. So we are running templates within a separate folder here. So we did that pretty much from the very beginning. So there are two options here. You can run the templates inside of the individual apps. And for some people, that makes perfect sense. Why not have everything about the account app within the account folder? And if you're making single apps, pluggable applications, then that makes more sense to have everything in the one folder. But I guess what's happening here, I've got no expectation for us to reuse this app at all. So separating out some of the different components in the first instance, for me, that isn't a problem. And secondly, if I do want to work with templates, typically I need to change multiple templates at a time, for example. So again, it can make a little bit more sense me having all the templates in a separate folder all in one place to make them easy accessible. So again, there's pros and cons here depending on how you're developing. If I had multiple developers working on this, maybe if they're assigned to different apps, then it may make sense for them to have a template folder inside of that app while they're working, for example, because everything's just in one place. That may be a better way of working, for example. So again, it's all situational. So my templates are here in a separate folder. So the second decision here, maybe the second decision, is tests. So I'm going to place all the tests and the app name within a test folder to begin with. So I'm going to have all the tests in one place. So again, you might see tests inside of the individual apps. I've removed all the test files, I think now from the apps, the original tests that we created. So again, that is going to be preference. I'm just going to have all the tests in one folder to begin with. Now, test is something that I can easily move around. So if I later, in a later stage or later phase of this application, I wanted to move them back, they're not necessarily tied too much in terms of absolute relative paths. So it should be an easy one to kind of move around later on. But I think because of how we developed this, in that we didn't make tests first, we haven't got a test-driven application. We're just learning how to develop first and then running some tests. And so having everything in one place, for me, just makes sense at the minute. But like I said, you may see tests inside of the actual applications. Okay, so the event folder. So we've got the event folder here. This is obviously just an event folder. It doesn't get copied across the virtual environment. Nothing much to say there. So there's some additional files here that we're going to be developing. So we are going to be running Pytest. So that's why that's there. The conf test py file, that's going to allow us, and it's connected to the Pytest. We'll talk about that later on. And then the gignore. So I've started now to kind of flesh out the gignore file to avoid some of the files, pushing files back into the repository. So that's all in place too. Okay, so that's pretty much it now for the project structure. So we are going to download the previous code. I'll take you through the whole step of restructuring. It's a pretty boring process to watch, I guess, but we're going to build a new application and we're going to move everything across step by step, updating where we need to. Again, that's just a good step for new developers to take because it allows you to kind of really get into your application and really see the folder structure and how things are connected. And it just gives you a better appreciation. Again, if you're completely new to Django, it can be a difficult task to complete. So it's all good experience. So second stage then in this tutorial is an introduction and preparing for Pytest. So at this point, we're just going to go through a few topics in this tutorial, and then we're going to start doing our test in the next tutorial. Okay, so in this tutorial, we're going to install Pytest. We're going to have a look at, very briefly, Pytest versus unit tests, and then we're going to run some tests with Pytest, and then just discuss a little bit about fixtures, because that's one of the big aspects that we're going to need to think about next, actually building or generating our test database. So generating some data and having that available throughout our tests. And Pytest comes with some great tools to help us build a database essentially just once, a test database once, and we can then share that across using the conf test py file to all the other tests that we have running. So we'll talk a little bit about markers, filters, because there is a warning that we need to get rid of, for example, and then coverage. So again, we've already covered coverage in the first couple of tutorials. We're just going to get that, prepare that, get that ready, and then in the next tutorial, we can then go ahead and build all of our tests. So go ahead and download part 8 of the e-commerce store. We are going to be using this and just moving forward. So I've done nothing to this code or any of the code. Everything we've done is all been recorded so far. So yeah, let's just go ahead and just download this. So if you're new to this, then I'll just take you through how to get this started. If you're not new to this, just head across to the video timeline and just skip over to the next part where we start changing the folder structure. So let's go ahead then and download. And I'm going to put that on my desktop, make a new folder. And I'm just going to extract that in. Oh, nope, don't do that. So I'm just going to extract that, and you can't see. I do apologize. I realize this. Okay, so let's extract here. Okay. Okay, so we don't want this long file name here, so Just going to take this out, folder name even. So here we go. So that's now the project in place. So let's go ahead now and just open up a new folder. Okay, so this is the project where we started with. So now we need to move that over to what you saw earlier. So we get the project started, we may as well, so we can test it as we go along. So we need to first of all get the virtual machine up and running. Like I said, if you know what you're doing, just skip ahead to the next part. So that's all activated. So let's just give this a go. So we need to pip install all the different dependencies. So that'll take a couple of seconds. If you're new to this, obviously all the requirements are right here that are needed to get started with this. So these are all the packages that are needed for this application. Okay, so it can take a couple of seconds, but once it's done, we'll go ahead and start the server. It's py. So you don't actually need py. I don't know why I type that in all the time. It's just a habit. There we go. All right, so that's running okay. So let's go have a look at that working. There we go. So you will find that the database is live. If you actually want to go into the database, or sorry, the admin area, the username is a@a.com, password admin. So you can go ahead and add some more products, etc. if you want to. So that gives you access to that. So everything is working okay. So now we're going to go ahead and restructure this project. So the main aim here is to think about how we're going to actually, we need to rename the core, for example, and then put all the apps inside the core in a new folder called app. Now, the easiest way to do this, I think at the moment, at this point, would be to just build a new Django application and just move everything across. That would probably be the easiest option at this point, because we have built this in a kind of modular way, believe it or not. Really, all we need to do here would be to change the settings and then add in the URLs if we wanted to go that way. So I don't see it being such a big problem at this point. And we can start again, because we'll just get rid of the debug toolbar maybe for now anyway. So again, not a big problem. Okay, so I've opened a new window in Visual Studio Code, made a new folder, and I'm going to do exactly that. I'm just going to build a new Django application and move everything across. So first of all, let's just build a new virtual virtual machine, like that, and then we go ahead and pip install Django. Or I guess what we can do at this point is actually let's just go into our virtual machine first. And what we can do now is just copy across the requirements over from our other application. So that's from the other window I've got open where I've downloaded the part 8. So if I just move across the requirements, I can just pip install those. Now, before I do that, actually, let's have a look through here, because I'm going to get rid of the debug toolbar for now. I'm not going to need that. This is a good time to just prune and take out anything we don't need. I think that's it, to be honest, at this point. So I'm going to get rid of the debug toolbar for now. We're not going to be utilizing it for a bit. So let's go ahead now and pip install. Now, what I also want to do here, actually, because there's a 3.2 is out. So let's go ahead and just install the latest version of Django. So I could have changed that, but I'm going to do this manually. So pip install Django. So as a recording, Django has released a new version. So here we're running Django 3.2 now. So we'll go ahead and install that. And then we'll go ahead and pip install all the other items here. And then we can do a freeze again to put Django back in this list. So obviously that's going to take a few seconds, and then we can do a pip freeze. Now there's a few ways of doing that. I've just done it this manual way. What am I doing? Freeze requirements. There we go. So here we go. So Django's back now there, 3.2 as of recording. Right. So with that now done, we now have all our dependencies. So that's that file completed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new project. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to use the Django admin and then start project. And this is the project we're going to start. It's e-commerce project. Commerce. There we go. So this is our main project folder now. And we're going to put our apps inside of this. So let's go ahead and build that. Cool. So you can see what I've done there. I've made the mistake on purpose. The dot is needed. Otherwise, you'll make a folder inside of a folder, and that's not necessarily what we want here. So let's go back and delete that folder. Let's do it again. So we use the full stop. So we've now got a little bit more control. E-commerce is there, right? So inside of e-commerce, we're going to have a new folder. We're going to call that app or apps. I'm going to call it apps, plural. Okay, so that's our apps. Right, so that's our apps folder in place. Now we can have a look at the URL. So it just gives us a little bit of space to think about that. So in the other screen, I've got the URLs from the previous. So I'm going to go into my core. Sorry, I can't run this next to each other because I'm working in this really small screen here while I'm recording. So I'm going to go into the core and I'm going to open up my URLs and I'm just going to copy and paste them in over to here. So that's taken from part 8 over to this new version. So I'm going to get rid of the debug toolbar. Not going to be utilizing that. So let's get rid of those paths. Okay, so what I'm going to do here in actual fact, while I'm migrating, is I'm just going to comment those out. Otherwise I'm going to have issues. So what I can do while I'm doing this is I can run the server. So the server is running okay. So as I go along, I can use this because obviously if I do something like this, I'm going to cause a problem because it can't find the URLs it's connected to. Right, so that's the main URLs. So now what I can do is I can start moving across some of my apps. So the first app that I want to move across, of course, is going to be the store. So again, I'm going to go into part 8 here. I'm just going to move this across to the new app folder. There we go. So I'm going to rename this store. I want it to be called now catalog. Okay, so that's going to be the products catalog. So this is all going to be associated to showing the products on the page, the single page, the category page, and so on. So I'm going to call mine catalog. So with that in place, you can see that I've got an error. This is going to be really important. So let's go into my URLs. So I want to just basically now call my app catalog. So anywhere I see store, I want to be called catalog, of course. So there's a few number of places I'm going to need to change this. So I do want to keep my server running because it's going to tell me, looks like that's okay now. So view products. So inside of my, so that's okay at the moment. So that's connected to that. So let's go back into here and see if we can activate the path now in the main app here. So include, now it's going to be catalog URLs. Namespace is going to be catalog. Okay, so catalog, because that's the name of the actual app, and then the URLs, and then namespace equals catalog. So if I go into the catalog URLs, I've now got my app name of catalog. Right, so that's all done. So what I can probably try and do now, if I were to go into my catalog here, what I can try and do now is actually register my catalog inside of my settings. So let's go ahead and try and do that. So installed apps, catalog. Now, what you're probably going to find here is there's going to be a problem, right? Because whereas before the folder it is looking for was the kind of root folder where there is a path to, now Django can't see by default just catalog. It doesn't know that that is referring to a folder called apps inside of that catalog. So we have to be a little bit more explicit here in determining where this actual app is. So this is where it gets a little bit exciting because I can bring in the Django documentation. And what we're covering here is this page here, applications. We're going to touch upon it. So we're just going to learn a little bit more about how to potentially build an application, what we define as an application, so start app. So this explains the difference between what it means by application and the project root directory, what we create when we do the start project, for example. So this is a really interesting page and it really nicely defines in good terminology and in simple terminology, the difference and what you're doing at the start of building a Django project in terms of a start project and start app. So first of all, before we move on to that, let's just go into our e-commerce. So what I've done here, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to delete this database. I'm just going to strip everything out here. So in my URLs, I'm going to make a little change here in my URLs. I keep saying So I need to kind of create the absolute path there, the Python absolute path to the URLs. So let's change that first and catalog. So we've done that. So in the settings, so where is before, let's remember, if I just close this down, we had the e-commerce, that was the core folder. And then inside of here, we also had the application, which was just called store, for example, right? So having this name here, this is just referring to this directory structure right here, really. That's essentially what's happening here, the absolute path to this kind of folder. Of course, that doesn't exist anymore. This is the problem, isn't it? So it's in e-commerce, and then apps, and then catalog. And this is why we're using this Python absolute path here, or project from the project root, absolute path to the catalog. So that's important to understand. What we're now using this here, and we can change this because we could tell Python about this folder here and add that to the path. And then Django could then automatically detect this catalog and all the other apps we have in here. We could work that way, but we're going to follow this path of using this dotted pattern to find the absolute path from the project root to the catalog. So that's how we're going to define it. So let's just go back in here. So let's just double check in the views. Just make sure you go over and change store in the views, and then URLs. We've got catalog here now. So that should be okay. Let's just turn some of this off. So in our models, I don't think there's anything there we need to change at the moment. The context processors I've just highlighted out for now. And then the apps we'll deal in a second. And admin. Actually, we can keep that for now. That's not a problem. And okay, there's nothing there. So the migrations, I've taken out the migrations, and we can get rid of this cache file. It will keep appearing, but that's not a problem. So we've started from scratch. Cool. Right. So what we've done is we've renamed, if you remember, the core app to the catalog app. So we can build apps manually. That's not a problem. We simply just need a folder with an init file here, and then just register it. That's pretty much it, to be honest. But one file we do have here is the apps.py. So something that is a key fixture here, and this is a file which actually we could delete. This would work perfectly fine if this file wasn't here. And in some respects, there's not really too much going on here that we need to utilize. But let's just take a look at, first of all, let's just take a look at the error that's occurring here. So when I start the server, so cannot import catalog, right? So And it clearly says check the e-commerce apps catalog. It's just taken us through the folder structure here. E-commerce apps catalog apps file catalog config and then name. So the problem here is it has identified this is incorrect. So if we go over to the documentation here and just read through, eventually we get down to, it's worth having a little read through here. Some of it might not make too much sense to begin with, reading through, but here it tells us about the application configuration. So app config, application configuration objects, stores metadata for our application. Some attributes can be configured. So others are set by Django and read only. So we can see some attributes here. So clearly it says config.appName. This is the full Python path to the application, e.g., and we've got this dot syntax here. So clearly what's happening at the moment is that this isn't working. If I can find it again. This isn't, the problem here is that this isn't the full path. This is just looking for a folder on our root project folder directory here. So again, as soon as we change this to ecommerce.apps.catalog, everything works absolutely fine. And there we go. So what else can we have? We've got labels, short name for the application. We've got the verbose name, human readable name for the application. So these all have different effects, and at the moment there isn't really too much to say that's worth talking about in our application, but as we go along, no doubt we can start to drop some of this in. So I'd rather give you more concrete examples than just to say, yeah, this is for that, for example. So let's just go ahead, and for now we are going to, because there's not really much going on here potentially for us, so let's just go on ahead and delete the apps file. Okay, so let's start again. Everything seems absolutely fine. So clearly we can remove that for now, and this will work for us for now. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So at the moment, what we've done is we fully now integrated our existing store app into our new app structure here. Now, let's now think about bringing everything back in. So I think that, so the category slug. Okay. I think we'll be okay there. Right, so we're probably okay now to think about, we'll keep that off because the categories doesn't exist yet. We can't import from category. I don't think so. Admin is on. Okay, so let's go ahead now and just migrate. Let's do a make migrations. And then we're migrating. Let's just see if this works. Okay. From the server. Okay, so now this application here is working because I've probably got a server somewhere else working. That's always the issue. There we go. So this is what we should have. Now the template does not exist. So let's go ahead now and go back into our app that we have. So this is where we're working. So I've also got open, remember, the code from the previous tutorials. Here we're working on a separate project, building this back up. So now what we need to do is just bring in our templates again. So we're just going to copy those across. So there's our templates. So we're not really going to make any change. We are not going to make any changes at all to our templates. There doesn't seem to be any real reason to do that. So template does not exist. Catalog index.html. So the problem we've got here now is that we need to just redefine inside of our e-commerce settings. Go down to the templates directory here, and we just need to add that back in. So pretty much start to speed up shortly. So what I'm going to do while we're here, I'm just going to bring in my VS Code folder. So I'm just bringing this back in my VS Code folder. So I've got black, etc., just to do some auto formatting. Okay, that's all good. So now that's sorted. That's not a problem. And we should now have our templates. Okay, so now we just need to go into our templates and now just strip out store and replace it with catalog. Right, so in templates, we're going to be in the catalog. Inside of here, we've got the index. So we're just going to store, find store. So index looks okay. Now yours is going to be slightly different. You're going to need to make some changes there. I think I copied across the one that I've already completed. So just go ahead. So you can see here that I've already changed, for example, here, and then the second one potentially, well, maybe not. So just make sure that the URLs are being resolved via catalog. We should be good there. Right, so with that done, store home, it should be fairly simple to solve because it tells me here in the base, for example, this is slightly wrong. So it says store home, URL catalog store home. So let's just go back in. I think I accidentally changed that in the app views. I think that's in the URLs. So I've called it catalog home. So it should be called store home, shouldn't it? That's not a problem. Okay, so account is not a registered namespace. So here's a link now to account. So let's now go ahead because we're just about there now, configuring that. So go through all these files here, look for store, change them where they need to be changed, and use the guidance there to help you understand what you need to do. So the next app that we're going to bring in is account. So let's go ahead and do that. So in my apps, I'm just going to drop, copy across accounts. There we go. So this is my second app. So this is from the previous code, remember the previous tutorial. So I've dropped that in. Let's go ahead and now delete a few things. So we don't need tests. We get rid of that. Notice that it then opens up catalog, which is really annoying. So what else do we need? We'll get rid of the app. We don't need that. Migrations. Yeah, we'll get rid of the migrations and the cache. Get rid of that. There we go. So see what happens. It flicks open the catalog. Even though I'm working with accounts, for some reason, when I do something with account, you can see it moves across to catalog because the URLs are open here. That's a little bit annoying. Right, so yeah, let's get rid of the account. So just make sure you're deleting the right one there. Right, so now that's done. Again, be careful not to delete the init file in it. So now we've got the accounts sorted there. Let's now go into, start from the e-commerce URLs. So let's turn this back on. So where's the account? Here's the path. So now we just need to remember where this is. So we're going to use the absolute path here, account.urls, namespace account. So we're not actually going to be changing any names there, so that's fine. So let's now go into the settings, and we can now go ahead and we can just copy this, right? So let's just call this account. Okay, so that's the account. Once we've done that, I think maybe we might be good. So let's go ahead and run the server. So it says here from orders order not found. So this is in the views. So there's just a little bit of crossover here. So let's go into our e-commerce app and accounts and go into views. So this is line 11. So here we're importing from order. That doesn't exist yet. So let's just comment that out for now. No module name orders. So that's on line 13. Okay. So that doesn't exist just now. And you can see here, no named store. So now we just need to find where it says store on line 14. So now that should be catalog, right? So e-commerce, apps, and then catalog dot models. There we go. Right. So that looks like it's okay there. Now, we've got this other problem now. Let's have a little read. Okay, so looks like we've got a related name issue. So let's first of all just go into our settings, and let's remember we're using custom table, user table. So what we can do here is just add back in some of our settings. So I'm just going to go to the previous file, previous settings file, and I'm just going to, we need to keep this, but that's new in 3.2 for now. So from the static downwards, I'm just going to copy and paste back in from the previous file. So from static to the end in the previous settings file there, I'm just going to bring that in. We're going to need to bring in OS. So let's do that. Import OS. Okay, so that's that done. See if a little bit of a strange problem, but let's just go ahead and delete the migrations. So I've deleted the migration files in both the catalog and the account. Okie dokie. Right, so let's just go ahead and make migrations, migrate, and let's just start the server again. Looks okay. So we can go ahead and create a super user. Always do that. Right. Give it a name admin, password admin. Looks like it's okay. Right. So that's those two apps pretty much integrated there. What we can probably do now, in actual fact, let's just start the server. Let's just go ahead and check initially that we can go into the admin area. So everything else there is looking okay. Got my accounts. Yep. Okay, so everything is good. So at this point, it should be pretty smooth. All we need to do now is bring across, bring across all the other apps that we have inside of our apps folder, tidy up the URLs, and put them in the settings like we've done before with the other two apps. And then it's just a case then of looking over the templates. And this was a good step to take, considering that we're now going to move into fully testing everything here. So it was a kind of a good opportunity to actually just sort this out. And it does allow us just to go through again and take out anything that maybe we've added that we can just get, or we don't need anymore, for example. So a little bit of tidying up. Right. So with that said, let's go back into our apps now. So I just dip back into the previous code. So let's now bring in the account and then the basket. Let's bring in the basket. So here's our basket app. So let's just get rid of some of the things we're not going to need. So for tests, the migrations, there aren't any. Let's just refresh that. The URLs. So I think there's anything there we need to do. Sometimes, like here, for example, we're bringing in different models. This is from the store app. So here's not going to be that. This is going to be from e-commerce, catalog.models. Okay, and here from the basket.basket, that's not a problem. Okay, so with that in place, let's just move down. E-commerce again, URLs. Let's just bring across the basket. We might as well just add in the checkout while we're here, and also the orders. And we might as well just do everything all at once now. So let's just go ahead and swap this all over. Okay, so that adds all that in. Let's go to the settings. Let's just make sure we've added all the apps. So there's 5 apps in all. So let's just add those in. So just go ahead and add those in all at once. Just thinking about our middleware. I don't think there's anything we need to add to that, but there is here in our context processors. Remember, we've got a context processor in our catalog. So that now comes from categories. So let's just remember that. So that should now be sorted there. Right, so let's go back into apps, basket. We might as well just turn it on, see what happens. Okay, seems we've got a error. File name, directory, or volume is incorrect. Okay, so this is going to be one of these problems. So let's just get rid of the apps file from basket. Let's run it again. Okie dokie. So let's just double check our URLs. E-commerce app basket URLs. This is the problem when you turn everything on all at once. So let's just go back and just remove what we don't need for now. So orders, account we have, checkout we're not added yet. So let's just add it in slowly, I guess. Okay, so I've gone ahead and just commented out in settings. So we've got the catalog, account, and basket now. Now we've got a different error here. So we've got an error here in basket line 3 from checkout module import delivery options. So we don't have checkout. So let's just now go back to the old code. Let's just bring in checkout into apps. Okay, so now we have the checkout. And let's now turn on checkout. Okay, so cannot import checkout. Check that you can. Okay, so that's because of our app file. So let's get rid of that. Okay, so now baskets. Now we can go back to the basket. So let's go back to our basket. Line 3, we're trying to import from checkout, and of course that doesn't exist. So it's going to be ecommerce.apps.checkout models. Cool. Okay, right. So in basket line 5, there's nothing called store anymore. So that's e-commerce. That's going to be the catalog models. And there we go. So everything is working to the point where it's actually turning on, which is all good. Obviously, we need to potentially do some migration. So let's just remember what we've just brought in here. We brought in the checkout. So we need to get rid of that migration. And then we also brought in the basket, which doesn't have any migrations. So but the checkout did. So I've just removed that migration for now so that we can go ahead and add it to our database in a second. So we may as well do that right now. And there we go. So that's the checkout models now created. And let's just turn it back on. And there we go. Right, so that leaves us with orders. So let's bring in orders. Right, so in the URLs, let's just now turn on our checkout and our orders. So you can see here that in the checkout views line 3, so let's go checkout views line 3. We're trying to bring in account here. So this is going to be ecommerce.apps.accounts. Again from basket, so ecommerce.apps.basket. and then orders ecommerce dot, yep, apps dot orders. Again, this is no module name store. So this is orders module. So let's go into the orders, views, apps, models. Line 5. So there's no store, so it's catalog. So let's go to e-commerce catalog. Okay. Order doesn't declare an explicit app label and isn't in the application installed apps. Okay, so let's go to orders and apps. Let's just remove that. That should solve that problem. E-commerce apps, orders, models. Orders, models. Okay. Right, model class e-commerce doesn't not declare an explicit app label. Okay. So here we have to remember to remove the migrations. Just thinking it's migrated. I guess that's the problem here. So no cache. Okay, so we've got this problem here. So let's just close that. So let's go ahead and make migrations. We've still got a problem. Okay, model class e-commerce apps, orders dot models dot order. So what we're here, let's just get rid of tests file. Okay. So let's just go back into e-commerce settings. We'll probably just need to turn on the app. Yep. Okay. So that's why. Solved that little problem. Okay. So let's now go ahead and make migrations. Okay. So we got another error in views, line 4 in the orders. So apps, orders, views, line 4. It says basket, so it's obviously e-commerce dot apps dot basket. Can we do it now? Yep. And then we migrate. So that's the orders migrated now. So that's pretty much everything migrated. All good. All right, so let's turn this on. Cool. All right, let's go back into our app then and have a look. So there shouldn't be any products here. Does not find categories, attribute class. Okay, so probably what's happening here, one of the things definitely happening, there's no data at the moment. So that's something that we can quickly add in. That could be a problem. Okay, but let's just go back into the code here. So let's go back into apps, and then it's the catalog context process. I'm just going to turn this back on. Probably part of the problem. There we go. So remember to add some data here. We're going to need to start off with categories. So this is the next problem we've got here. Admin template does not exist. Admin catalog category. So here we just need to bring over our static folder. Let's copy that across. That has the, I would assume that would have that. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So this is just the MPTT template issue. Not too worried about that for now. We can add that shortly. Actually, saying that, if you go into settings, what we haven't done is we haven't actually added MPTT back into our list of apps. So just looking at my old list of apps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we've got now that back in. So in actual fact, that probably worked now. Yep. So let's go ahead and just add a category. And then product type. Just something random for now. Okay, is active. And then we can now add a product. Product is visible. Let's press save. Let's just go back here and have a look, see if that works. There we go. So we've got a product. We didn't add an image. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So that now is the bulk of the work over. We're just moving those apps into this new folder here, and explicitly then defining the path to them and removing some files, and then just going through the process again of recreating our database, which will change shortly. We're going to add some fixtures so that we can quickly build a large-scale database with data in it that we can work from. Now, we do want to finish this off with all the other files. So let's just quickly go over these if you're not familiar with them. So I'm going to bring in the git ignore here. So these files here folders represent files and folders I don't want to save in my GitHub repository. So I've just defined them here, folders and files that I don't want to save. So that's my GitHub or git ignore file. What else can I need here? So I've got my license. So there's a few questions about what you can do here. Really, just please change, modify, merge, publish, make better from this code. Please do. Absolutely no problem there. So I've got my README and the requirements already in place. So that's pretty much that in there. Let's bring back the docs folders. So just copy that across. So we've got some doc folders here. Okay, so we've got the database schema, which I'll update, the folder structure that we're utilizing. Okay, the .vs code, and that's it. That's all we need right now. Okay. So eventually you probably find these static files, we're going to serve them across from AWS, for example. So that isn't going to be in there. Something else that's probably missing is our media folder. So we're going to need to build that media folder again. Let's just copy that across. So that already has a load of images here. So let's just get rid of it all, apart from the default image. Okay, so that kind of resets the image folder for us. And then what we also want to do is create a new folder called tests. So this is where our tests are going to reside. We're going to create new folders, one for each application. So we'll start off with the catalog, for example, and inside of here, we'll then create a new file called test_catalog. So we now have a new structure for the project moving forward, which is all good. And we'll work towards this folder structure. There's no massive changes here now. We've moved across to this folder structure. There's only building on this now rather than making large changes. So now we can move on to an introduction to preparing for Pytest. So the story so far with testing is that we've been doing some unit testing at the start of the project. We went through some of the basics of performing that, and then we got a little bit lost as we were developing the application. And that was because I wanted to just focus on the development components, and knowing that we were then going to move across at some point, which is now, over to Pytest. So the first thing we need to do then is install Pytest. So you can see Pytest Django is the plugin for Pytest that provides a set of useful tools for testing Django applications and projects. So that's what Pytest is going to provide us. So let's go ahead now and install. So that's also going to install Pytest and Pytest Django. So with that done, we can now just update. Let's just update the requirements text with all those. So we should now have all the Pytest available. Right, so that's that installed. So what we need to do now, then, we're instructed to create a Pytest.ini file. Okay, so this is the next step for us. So let's go ahead and do that, and that'd be on the root directory here. So let's just create a new file, Pytest.ini. So here we can set some of the parameters of working with Pytest. So here, for example, we can define, for example, what files we want to associate with testing. So here, let's just get rid of that. So here we're going to test. We're going to look for any test files that begin with test.py, test underscore something. So the star representing anything after that or before. So something underscore test will also be picked up here by Pytest. So let's just go ahead and run Pytest. So all we need to do is type in Pytest. And you can see here, no tests for run. It gives us a little bit more information. The plugins that we're utilizing. So clearly it can't find any tests. And that's because we did delete the existing, well, I did delete the existing tests. If it does pick any tests up on yours, you just need to go through to the Ecommerce folder, look for the apps, and then go in and delete the corresponding tests. Now, Pytest will work with the tests that we created before, in actual fact. So that's one good thing about Pytest, is that if you have already done testing and you want to utilize this, this new package, we can still utilize the old tests. So let's now go ahead and now create some tests. Before we move on, let's just make sure that we have the Django settings module in place. So here we're just going to define the settings relative to the Pytest file here, and that's the e-commerce settings. So that's just in the instructions. Now let's just go ahead and run Pytest. So you can see that I've got a few warnings here related to MPTT. That's the package that we have installed. So we can deal with this all within the Pytest here. Now, it'd be worth reading a little bit of the documentation, which is a little bit tricky, I would say. The documentation is wonderful, of course, but it can be difficult for new users, I think, to really traverse into. I think it's a big learning curve at the start to kind of read through this documentation. And it's probably, like most things, it's less complicated than what it how it reads, that's for sure. So, for example, there's many ways for us to target these warnings here. We can just simply turn them off. So to do that here, we can define filter warnings, for example. So here, basically, I'm just switching them off. So let's just go ahead and try that again. And this time you can see that, yeah, we don't get any warnings at all. So that's not necessarily the best way of working, but for now we're going to do that. So you can, for example, we can target different warnings. That definitely is viable too. But yeah, we're just going to, first of all, just turn them all off. So let's do a little bit of testing. So I'm assuming that you've gone through this series and you've got a general idea of what testing is for and why we're doing testing. So that was in the first and second tutorial. We mentioned a little bit about that. So let's go into our test file here in category, or catalog, sorry, in test category. Let's just remind ourselves what we would do, for example, utilizing the approach we started with in the first tutorial. So we're going to import the test case. And then if you remember, we needed to make a class. So let's just go ahead and do this. So this is a test class, let's call it that. And then we brought in test case into our class here. Then we had a function. So let's just call this hello world. And here, for example, we brought in self. So we probably would want to call this test and then the name of the test. So we want to try and be as descriptive as possible when we're naming the test. So we're bringing self. We're inside of this class, of course. So, and then we have self dot assert equal, for example. So we're just going to match two strings in this case. So for example, hello and hello. So we're just matching these two strings. If they match, obviously the test is successful. So that's a little bit long-winded, the setup here, utilizing our method that we approached initially. So Pytest, let's just compare this to Pytest. Well, actually, let's just run this first. So you can see that we've run this. Let's just have a look at a positive test case. So the default output then, just running, I need to change the scroll. You can see the default output, it tells us where it's found the test, and then the fact that we've got one passed test. So there's a few things that we can do here. We might as well talk about this first before we compare this. Here, for example, like the previous approach, we can specify where we want to find the tests. So like you might imagine, we can specify a directory. So in this case, it's going to be relative to where we are now. So tests, for example, there we go. So it's going to look in the test folder. So inside of the test folder, we've got account. Oh, no, we haven't. We've got catalog. There we go. So we can just move into this catalog. Inside of catalog, we've got the, I think it's the test catalog file. Oh, I spelled that wrong. There we go. And then inside of there, we've got the actual test. So we can also go into the test. So the test is called test, or in actual fact, at the moment, we're using a class. So, but when we move down to Pytest, we can also go ahead and just then select the test in that format. So that's how we can select tests. So let's now move over to actually kind of comparing this. So a comparison here, if we just remove that. All we need to do with Pytest is bring it in, import it in, and we can go ahead and straight away start building our function and assert hello equals hello. So you can see there's less setup code here to perform exactly the same thing. So I can go ahead and run that test, and we've got one passed, and you can see it's now going from the test catalog.py. So nice and simple, nice and simple. So this is just a small introduction so we can get started using Pytest. So we've gone through the installation. That is now set up. So there's not too much more to say. Pytest versus unit test. So you can see clearly straight away that there's going to be kind of less code. We're just going to create and go, write in our function with assert, for example. So that just makes it nice and quick, and I think easier to get into to begin with if you're not familiar with developing. Now, obviously, the good thing here that I already mentioned, Pytest is compatible with your existing kind of unit tests. So that's all good as well. So you can kind of migrate over if you haven't already started using Pytest. Although Pytest is probably the most popular package for testing here with Python and Django. So saying that, we're now going to have a look at some of the other things that we can start to do. And the first thing we need to have a little bit of an understanding about before we start utilizing Pytest is fixtures. So the word fixtures in Django, I guess we refer to, if you think back to databases. So we create our database and then we use fixtures, which is basically the data that we want to put into a database inside of a, say, JSON file. And then we basically get that file and we put all that data into our database once we've created all the tables. So a fixture here, we can think of a fixture as a way of defining code before, after, and while tests are running. So how I'd kind of think of it here is we can utilize it in terms of our database again. So what we're going to use fixtures for, just to get straight into this, is that before we run the tests, we're going to build our testing database. So like unit tests, Pytest, we can create a database, a testing database. So we're not going to use the real database to run our tests. We're going to create a separate database. So fixtures is going to allow us to develop that database beforehand so that we can then use that database to run across our tests. And one of the good things here with Pytest is that we can easily build a database from multiple sources. So as we build our as we build our applications in our code, we can add fixtures. We can put that in the app folder, and then we can call it into our our main fixture area and build that database, and then utilize that across the whole of our tests really easily. And we can do that by utilizing this conf test py file. So this is a file which Pytest will look for before it starts to run the tests. So what we can do in here is we can add our fixtures in here, and we'll show you this. I'll give you an example in a minute where we can go ahead and build our database and then utilize that when we run any of the tests that we want. So I'll give you an example of that. And then the idea of markers. So this is just some really handy metadata that we can apply to our tests. So for example, if we know that a test isn't working, we can just flag it as, well, we know it's not working, we'll sort it out later. And we can add our own markers. So for example, if there was a set of tests that you wanted to run at a particular time, instead of running all the tests that we have, we can mark tests. So for example, we might mark a test called core, and that'd be like a core test we want to just run at a certain time. So those markers can be placed in the tests or next to a test or associated to the test, so that we can just run those tests that are marked as core, for example. And we've had a look at filter warnings. And then finally, we'll just quickly talk about coverage again if you haven't seen coverage before, and start to utilize that to identify where tests are needed. So let's talk a little bit about fixtures. So what are fixtures? Fixtures are functions that can run before and after each test, for example. So I guess we should go ahead and build one. So let's just go ahead and build a new function here. So we're just going to call this test fixture 1, and we're just going to say print run each test, and then return 1. So now we have to define this as a fixture. So we go ahead and do that. That is not a problem at all. So pytest.fixture. So now this is defined as a fixture. Now, the default fixture, if I remember correctly, this will run once per test. So this is it. This will be described as a default fixture. What we can do is define different fixtures. So a function that will run once per test, class, run once per class of tests, for example, if we're using classes. And then we also have module, which will run once per module, and then session, which will run once per session. So session seems like a good thing, because what we can do here with this fixture is we could run this per session. So per, in this case, running all the tests. So that'd be one session, right? So what we can possibly do now in a second is use a fixture with assigned to session in the new file that we're going to build. And then we could collaborate all the different database fixtures and build our database in that space. And then we can then utilize it throughout our whole testing. So to specify what type of fixture we want to use, we can just use scope equals session or module and so on. So the default will be function. So run each test. So let's go ahead now and hook this up to a test. So how we're going to use this is we're going to bring in this function into, we'll just reutilize this here. So we're bringing the function in. And now what we can now do is, let's just print something. Let's call this function fixture 1. Okay, so we're going to print something out, and then let's just use an assert here. So it's a test fixture 1 should equal 1. So it's returning 1. So it should equal 1. So let's go ahead and test that. There we go. So one test is passed. Right, so at the moment, you can see the output here is just providing some basic information, what tests are being run, and the information about the test, whether it's passed or failed, etc. And then the time it took also then to run the test. So now we need to kind of dive in for the next part because we want to learn a little bit about reporting, what kind of reporting options we have available. And here you can see some new features here. We have the new RP. So let's go ahead and have a look at the new RP reporting feature. So this is going to just provide us a different way of returning information. So RP, there we go. So now what you can see here by utilizing this reporting function is that we can now see what's actually being printed. So clearly here, if I move down, you can see that we've got our fixture here, which is running for each test. So you can see run each test. And then our second test is now running. It's printing out function fixture 1. And then assert equals, that's obviously correct. So it's running that test if 1 equals 1, and we get 1 pass. So let's just go ahead now and do the same thing again. At this time, we're going to call this test fixture 2. So we'll call this number 1 and number 2. So we've got a different function name. So we're going to bring in the test fixture again. So let's just run that again. So you can now see that we're now running the run each test twice, run each test, and then the test, run each test, and then function 2. So clearly you can see that's running every test. So let's just test this out now to see if we can change the scope here. So let's start off with the module. So scope equals module scope. Okay, so let's give this a go. Let's run it again. So this time clearly you can see, apologies, my scrolling just scrolls way too much. So this time you can clearly see that the run each test is not running each test anymore. It's only running once, so per module here. This is all defined as one module. So it's only running once, and you can see that then the 2 tests are running and they're utilizing the same code here. So in terms of a database, this would be our database table that we developed, or tables that we want to use for our tests. And then we can go ahead and utilize that in all of the different tests that we want to run. So in a practical sense, that's really handy because what we can do here is we can build our database, our testing database, and then utilize that throughout all of our testing. Now, if we want to utilize this on multiple test pages or files, then we can then use the next approach. So as I've already mentioned, the conf.test.py file is looked at before the tests are run. So we can utilize this to build up our fixtures, make our fixtures, our testing database data, and then obviously utilize it across all of our testing. So let's go ahead into the main directory here and create a new file. So we're going to call this conf.test.py. I think I spelled that wrong. Okay, so now we've got that in place. We can now just copy this across. It's always just. So let's get that removed. Let's go back into our conf.test file. So we need to import Pytest. Wasn't very good. There we go. So this is a run once. So let's just call this one run once. Let's make this session. We want to run it once per testing session. Run once. It's going to return 1. Okay, so now we've got that in place. Let's go back into our tests here. Bring this down a bit. I'll just get rid of that. So now we want to bring this in. So let's do that. Well, in actual fact, we've already done that, because here we're just calling it test fixtures 1. So let's just think of it as globally available now. So it's been set, and let's make sure we've got scope. So it's been set and now it's globally available. So let's go ahead now and just run this. See if it works. And there we go. So it's just run once across our fixtures. Oh, sorry, it's run once across our testing. So let's just go ahead and just build this separate page here, this view page. So let's import Pytest. Okay, so we'll call this number 3. fixture 3. Yep. Okay, so let's run our test again. And we've got our fixture 3 there. Oh, sorry, our test. I'm not too sure why I call it fixture. So run once is run once. And you can now see that potentially they are now accessing that because the test has been successful throughout multiple pages. So if you went ahead and changed the test, knowing that it's going to fail, and run the test again, you can see here that we get an indication that one test has failed, 2 has passed. That's all good. So what you might want to do at some point is add in some marks. Marks provide us some metadata on the tests. So for example here, let's just go ahead and use the Pytest mark called xfail. So this allows us to flag tests that we know that is failing. So let's run it now, and you can now see that, yep, it's now failed. So there might be some instances where you know tests are going to fail for some particular reason, and they might be marked as such. So that option is available. So another popular thing that you might not do, but which you can do, is we can also skip. So we can skip tests. So if we know that it's definitely broken, we don't want to add it yet, or we've changed some of the code and we want to remove it, we want to keep the test there potentially, but we want to skip it, so we can define it as skipped. And now you can see 2 passed, 1 skipped. So it's probably better to do that rather than to just highlight it out, comment it out, because it can potentially just remind us the fact that we need to do some work in this particular area. Otherwise, we might have forgotten the test and we're not testing that particular area anymore. So that's a feature that's really handy. Now, what we can also do, which I was alluding to in the prelude here to this, is that we can also add our own marks. So for example, if we knew this was, and this is just a bad example, if we knew this was a test that we definitely had to run, or there was a specific set of tests that we wanted to run at certain times, we could create our own mark. So I'm going to call this core. Then I just need to go into the Pytest area here, and I can go ahead and add some markers. So markers equals, let's go for, or I call it core, sorry. I just remember then. I called it core. So this basically marks tests. This is just a string to define what core is. Marks tests that are core to an app or a set of apps. There we go. So that's core. So we're now marked it as core. So what we can now do is just run the core tests. So we can do that by typing in Pytest mflag, and then it's called core. Okay, so 1 failed, 2 deselected. So obviously our test is still failing because we haven't changed it, but we're running this test, remember? So that's all good. So now it's passed, 2 deselected, and there we go. So actually there's one last thing, wasn't there? And that was coverage. So if you're not familiar with coverage, coverage is going to provide us an indication of where tests are needed. Now I think we've already utilized it, so it might already be available. It is already installed here, but you can go ahead and run this. So it's just a pip install coverage. So this is going to be a tool that's going to allow us to identify where tests are needed, although it doesn't necessarily always identify all the tests that are needed. It is a good way of starting this. So what we can do is run coverage with Pytest. So let's do coverage run and then Pytest. So that's Pytest running with coverage. So what we can do now is we can get our reports. So let's run the coverage report. So that's going to give us a HTML report. So inside of here, we're going to have an index file, which we can open up in our browser. Wow. So let me quickly find that. So that's in this folder here. So inside of here, we've got htcarv. Inside of here, we've got the index. That's obviously opened up on a different window. It's not useful. So here we go. This is the coverage report. Now, there's loads of stuff here. Now, at the moment, it's looking for all sorts of folders for tests that need to be done. And of course, we don't want that. So let's just go ahead and prune this. Now, in the previous tutorials, I showed you an approach of utilizing the command line to perform this action. Or in actual fact, what we can do is we can just go ahead and write a script so that we can avoid testing any folders or apps that we don't want to. So in our main directory, right click, new file. This is going to be a dot coverage RC folder file. So there we go. So this is going to provide us a way of omitting different folders and files. I'll just copy this in. There we go. So it's easy to understand. So when we run, now this is from the documentation. You can read the coverage documentation here. We're going to omit some files and folders. So the event folder, we don't want to do that. The conf.fp, the tests and settings. So these are all the things that we don't want to potentially try and coverage or try and make tests on. And a similar thing here. So if I go ahead now and run coverage, so the reporting is referring to the reporting here, for example, HTML. So if I run this again, let's go back in and refresh. It's obviously going to update. You can now see we've kind of skimmed through all of that other testing that we don't want to do. And now we can just focus on the apps that we have here. So it didn't pick up all of them in actual fact. So maybe there's a few different settings there we need to consider. But we've got the bulk of it here. And it looks like we're going to need to do around about 29 tests, which is absolutely nothing, really. We could run into hundreds of tests here potentially. And of course, this is just Pytest. So that gives a clear indication of what we need to get started with. So if you've got to the end, thank you very much. It's probably a little bit boring restructuring the project, but I'm going to show you every single second of this development as we go through. So please use the timeline. And of course, the repository is always available afterwards. So if you want to skip some of the tutorials, you can. And that was a short introduction in preparing for Pytest, which I will make into an individual tutorial as well. And I'll probably add some more things into it and develop that further. So hopefully that was useful. And now we're ready for actual testing, which we'll do in the next tutorial. So thank you again for listening. Hopefully that was useful, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.